Hi everyone, I hope you all had a good weekend. Welcome back to a new week of school. This is only going to be a 4-day week of school for you, kind of. Friday is going to be nice and simple, it's just a survey. But anyway, let's get started with our Monday. So as you can see, I'm on flat, and what we're going to do today is we're going to work with a new score on flat. So once you selected new score, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to call this Chord Inversions. I'm sorry, there's no T in the word inversions. Now, last week we talked about inverting intervals in music and how that flips what we have. And before that, we were talking about intervals, talking about just the distance from one note to another. But before we started focusing on intervals, we actually did talk about chords a few weeks ago. And we're going to return to chords today. Now, inversions can exist with intervals, as we saw last week, but they can also exist with chords, and that's going to be the focus of today's class. So once you have your title on the score, go ahead and click continue. And like most things that we do with flat, we're going to go to keyboards and select the grand piano to work with. I'm going to hit create. Now with grand piano, we have a treble clef staff and a bass clef staff. A lot of times we don't use the bass clef staff, but the piano sound is really easy, really clear to hear and understand. And also with the piano playback, it does a really good job of letting the notes ring out the full length. I know that we used the xylophone last week, but the xylophone doesn't really play the note the whole way through. It doesn't hold a sound as long as what's written. So we're going to use the grand piano, even though we don't need that bass clef. Okay. My computer's been really thinking, really working hard. Here we go, we're ready to go. Just like usual, I'm going to change the tempo, the musical speed of what we have. That's going to be the first thing, so that way when it's time for playback, it's not going to be holding us back too far. So we can see we have quarter notes selected here, or quarter rests, but I'm going to come up to the top, and I'm going to click whole note to change to whole note input. You can also do that by pressing the 1 key on your keyboard. And we're going to need a chord if we're going to invert one. So this might not come as a surprise. We're going to start working today with the C major chord. So the first note in the C major chord is that C right there. Now we need to stack a couple notes on top of it. The next note in the C major chord, the major third, is E natural. And now we can hear that major third when we click there. And we need one more note to make this a full chord, and that note is G. So once we have these 3 notes here, we officially have a C major chord. Now I'm going to come to the text tool and choose annotation. I'm going to click where we are with that C major, and I'm going to write C major. Now here's a new vocab term for you. I'm going to call this root position. Now what this means, I suppose I need to define for you what the root is. So when we have chords have a root. Each chord has exactly one root. What the root is the note who has the same name as the chord. So this is a C major chord. What that means is our root is that C. This chord is named after the note C. So that's our root. That's the most important note that we have here. Now root position, what that means is that our root, the C, is the lowest note in this chord. We can see here we have C on the bottom. It is the lowest looking note, and it is also the lowest sounding note. So what we have here is a C major chord in root position. That's all we need to do for this first video. Come back to the next video to see some inversions.